Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is gleam, and this verb was suggested by the viewer Artem. Artem, thanks so much for this suggestion. Now let's take a moment and look at some of the definitions or the ways that we can use the verb gleam. The first way you might encounter it means to shine brightly, especially with reflected light. Sometimes we might think of the sun casting a light and causing something else to shine more brightly because of that reflected light. But that light source could be from other places as well. A second way you may encounter the verb gleam can mean to reflect light because something is well polished. So we might think of something being extremely clean in just this fantastic condition, and therefore the light reflects off of it. A third way you may encounter gleam means to appear or be expressed through the brightness of someone's eyes or an expression. We're going to see some examples of that a little bit later, but it has to do with a certain look that may appear in one's eyes. For now, you should know that gleam is a regular verb. If you want to make the progressive form of this verb, all you need to do is add ing, and that forms gleaming. The past tense and the participle form of our verb can be made by adding ed. The base verb, gleam, ends in a voiced M sound. This means our ed ending is just going to make a D sound or a duh sound. We're not going to add an extra syllable when we say it. The past tense and the participle form of the verb should sound like this. Gleamed, gleamed. Okay. Now there is a phrasal verb that we might encounter. Let's see if we can take a look at that phrasal verb. There we go. And that phrasal verb is to gleam with. This can mean that something is shimmering or twinkling with something else. An example of this. Her jewelry is gleaming with sunlight. Right? So again, imagine some bright sun hitting something and really making it sparkle or twinkle more so than it might already be doing. Now let's continue using our verb of the day. We'll practice a couple verb tenses as we go along. Today we're going to review the present progressive, which is also known as the present continuous, and the simple future. Let's start with the present progressive. Now, you've already heard me say this is the same as present continuous. Different books and teachers use these two terms, but they mean exactly the same thing. With this verb tense, we're focused on an action that is happening now or an action that is in progress during a time period that has not yet been completed. The reason I use present progressive with my students is the two P's can help them remember they need two parts to make our verb. We'll be using the present form of be and then the ing form of our verb. Now you may know be has three forms in the simple present, and that means we're going to have slightly different forms based upon our subjects. We're going to have to pay attention to that. To make a sentence in the affirmative or to make a positive sentence, we'll start with our subject. If that subject is I, you'll use am, and then our ing form the verb. But if our subject is you, we, or they, we'll use are, A-R-E, and then the ing form of the verb. Finally, if our subject is he, she, or it, we'll use is, and then the ing form of the verb. Let's take a look at an example. Our house is gleaming after a full weekend of spring cleaning. Here, this sentence might go back to that second definition. Right? We talked about polishing something. We're really suggesting here is like everything looks great, all right? Looks like it's shiny and new due to this thorough, deep cleaning. Now let's talk about making sentences in the negative. To do this, again, you're going to start with your subject and use the correct form of be that matches, followed by not, and then the ing form the verb. Now you can make contractions with are not, that will become aren't, or is not, which will become isn't, but there's no contraction with am not. Okay, let's take a look. An example of a present progressive sentence in the negative might be, your skin isn't gleaming today, right? So maybe someone's a little sick, a little under the weather. Their appearance just isn't what it normally is. Okay, we'll see lots of examples of Gleam actually as it relates to facial care and kind of this idea that for many people, they sort of want to sparkle as they present themselves to others. Finally, let's look at making a yes or no question in the present progressive. To do this, start with your form of be, whatever form matches your subject, that subject should come next, followed by the ing form, the verb. Here's another example. Are his eyes gleaming with mischief? Okay. So that's the third definition that I mentioned a little bit earlier, to have this look, right? Kind of sort of a feeling like someone might be up to no good. Many parents can recognize this look in the eyes of their children, like, oh, I know they're up to something. And sometimes with our friends, maybe even close co-workers, right? You might see, again, it's many times referred to as sort of a sparkle or spark in one's eyes. Now let's move on and make some sentences in the simple future. Today we're going to make our sentences using be going to. This is most common as people discuss their plans for the future, but you may still encounter some instances where people are making offers or predictions with it. Just like the present progressive, we are going to be using the present form of be. So again, we've got to watch our subject here. But in the affirmative, we're going to have a slightly different structure. I hope you can tell the difference here. For a positive sentence, we start with our subject, then we use either am, are, or is. Then we use going to, and then the base verb. Okay? So we're not adding any suffixes to the verb here. The simple future does not have that ing ending to the main verb. Okay? Let's take a look at an example sentence. This luxury train is going to gleam with gold. Right? So here, someone was discussing their plans. I think I borrowed this from a particular story or text as someone made these kind of extravagant plans for their future. Now let's talk about making a negative simple future sentence. To do this, again, you start with your subject. You use the form of be that matches, followed by not, going to, and then the base verb. Here's another example. These new fixtures aren't going to gleam after polishing. So many times this verb has a really positive meaning to it, right? Something looks great, kind of shiny, but sometimes we don't want that. And I saw a mention of this as it related to motorcycles and certain elements or parts. The idea was here we don't want light reflecting off of it because it can make it difficult to see and to navigate or operate the motorcycle. So this particular new model of motorcycle had been designed so that certain elements would not cause that light reflection. Now, let's take a look at a yes or no question in the simple future. To do this, start with your form of be, whatever form matches your subject, that comes next, followed by going to and our base verb. Here's another example. Is the new courthouse spire going to gleam again? So spire might be a slightly new word, so I've included a picture down in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. Kind of a decorative element that exists on some buildings. This was a question that was being asked because the previous spire had been destroyed in a storm, and residents were really proud of how this particular building looked, and so they were asking about the plans and kind of that idea that we would have this shiny decorative feature as this particular building was restored into working condition. Now let's spend a moment looking at some words and phrases related to our verb gleam. And the first word we're going to start with is just the noun form of this word. The noun gleam has the exact same spelling and the exact same pronunciation as our verb. Like our verb, there are a few different ways we can use this noun. The first way you may encounter the noun is to mean a faint or brief light, especially one that has been reflected from something else. An example of this in a sentence might be, a gleam of silver light flashed through the window. Right? So just with this sentence alone, we don't know what that source is or what caused that particular brief light to enter the window, but sounds like something someone might investigate or look into. Now, a second way to use gleam can mean a brief or instance of some kind of quality or emotion. An example of this, there goes my last gleam of hope. Right? So someone was maybe having a really difficult kind of period, thinking about something in the future, being hopeful, but all of a sudden, right, this faint bit, it's gone now for whatever reason, maybe based on someone else's actions or certain considerations. A third way gleam gets used as a noun refers to the brightness in a person's eye, particularly as it relates to some type of particular emotion. An example of this, gleams of pride flashed in her parents' eyes as she walked across the graduation stage. Right? So again, we might think of sensing rather strong emotions from someone's eyes. Sometimes those are kind of brief moments, but there's a quality or characteristic that's a little bit different. This brings us to a phrase you might encounter, to be a gleam in one's eye. Okay. This phrase can actually be used two different ways. One is to refer to some type of facial expression that is noting some happiness, maybe amusement, or perhaps even some knowledge of a secret. An example of this, the gleam in Mary's eye indicated she had a plan to get them out of their predicament. Here, this might be that secret kind of thing, but there's some sort of spark or something about her eyes indicating that she, kind of the wheels are spinning, we might say. She has a plan. Now, a second way gleam in, and of course it could be the name of a person, it could be a possessive noun, possessive adjective as well, just kind of depends on its use there. But a second way to use gleam in one's eye refers to either a hope or a plan that is not yet in existence. So we're going to tend to see this in the negative. So an example of this, you weren't even a gleam in your parents' eyes when that happened, right? So here kind of means like your mother was not pregnant. Maybe your parents weren't even thinking about having kids at the time when this particular thing occurred. So that would be kind of the hope or the plan there that was not yet in existence. Thanks again to Artem for suggesting today's verb. I thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.